AITA for wanting to break up with my amazing boyfriend? I never thought I would be the type of person to write a post like this, to put my private life out into the void of strangers. But here I am, typing and backspacing and typing again, because my chest feels so heavy with this dilemma that I don't know what else to do. Maybe I just need someone to read it. Maybe I need the judgment. Maybe I need to hear that I'm not crazy, or maybe that I am crazy, so I can finally act without second-guessing myself that I'm a teenager, still technically in the middle stages of high school, but old enough to believe I know what love is. Old enough to believe that when you find someone who treats you with kindness and patience and unconditional care, you should never, ever let them go. Old enough to feel the weight of expectations from friends, from movies, from social media, from the tiny hopeful voice inside myself that whispers, "You got lucky, don't screw this up." And yet here I am, seriously considering ending things with the boy who has been the best thing that has happened to me in years that I met him by accident. It sounds cliché, like something from a teen romance novel, but it really was chance. He added me on Snapchat out of boredom one day. I didn't know his face, his voice, his laugh. He was just a random username that popped into my list. And then we started talking, and talking, and talking. The way conversations spilled between us was unnatural in the best way, as if we'd been skipping small talk our entire lives waiting for this exact moment. He told me later that he immediately fell in love with me, or at least with how I looked in those early filtered pictures I sent, but also with my sarcasm, my little rants about school, my obsession with late-night playlists. He confessed that for him, it was almost instant. For me, it took a little longer. I'm cautious by nature, and a part of me thought, if it's too easy, maybe it's not real. But the longer we spoke, the harder it was to deny that something important was happening, that I had been in what I can only call a bop phase before him. I was drifting, insecure, trying too hard to be someone else, clinging to people who didn't actually care about me. He arrived like a rope thrown to someone treading water for too long. His attention, his interest, his gentle questions, they felt like proof that I was still worth noticing. And once I started to believe him, I started to believe in myself. Again, that was new. That was intoxicating that we met in person not long after. And if I'm honest, I had braced for disappointment. Screens can flatter, conversations can be curated, expectations can balloon. But he was real in the best way. Nervous, yes, and awkward in that teenage boy way, but genuine. His eyes crinkled when he smiled. He fumbled with his sleeves. He blushed. When I teased him, I felt an affection that went deeper than just attraction. It was recognition. Those first months were a blur of late-night texts, hallway glances, stolen kisses in between classes, and long phone calls that stretched until one of us drifted off mid-sentence. He was patient in ways I didn't know boys could be. He listened when I spiraled into insecurity. He reassured me when I doubted my worth. He treated me not like a burden, but like a gift. And every time I caught myself waiting for the other shoe to drop, he surprised me by simply saying that he's sweet. So sweet it almost hurts. He calls me beautiful even when I've cried my mascara into black rivers. He tells me I'm smart when I joke about failing tests. He kisses my forehead when I least expect it, like he's pressing a stamp of safety onto my skin. He's the kind of boy who remembers the little things, the brand of chips I like, the way I like my hoodie sleeves rolled, the fact that I hate being tickled but love being held. That I think that's what makes this so unbearable. Because by all accounts, by every checklist of what a good boyfriend should be, he passes with flying colors. He is patient, caring, attentive, funny in his own weird way, loyal to a fault. He isn't the type to flirt with other girls behind my back. He isn't the type to lie. He isn't the type to manipulate me or gaslight me or make me question my sanity. He is, in the simplest and most frustrating sense, amazing, and yet, the "and yet" has been gnawing at me for weeks, maybe months, and I hate myself for it. Because how do you justify leaving someone who has given you nothing but love? How do you look at a person who has never wronged you, never betrayed you, never made you cry out of cruelty, and say, I don't think this is enough, but I feel it. In the quiet moments, in the pauses between our laughter, in the way I catch myself scanning the room for something more. I feel it when he makes silly faces in public and I cringe instead of laughing. I feel it when his skinniness, something that should not matter, sticks in my mind like a splinter. I feel it when he talks about our future like it's already carved in stone, and my stomach tightens instead of fluttering that I keep telling myself it's just fear. Fear of commitment, fear of settling, fear of becoming someone's everything, before I even figure out who I am. But another voice whispers darker things. Maybe I'm selfish. Maybe I'm shallow. Maybe I'm the asshole. Still, I replay the sweetness. The way he made me playlists. The way he hugged me so tight after my parents grounded me for weeks. The way he texted me, "good luck," before every exam. The way he whispered he loved me after 2 months and looked terrified, but brave enough to say it anyway. If love were only measured in gestures, I would never let him go. But love is also measured in desire, in attraction, in the way your stomach flips at someone's presence. And lately mine feels more like knots than butterflies. I know I'm only at the beginning of this story. I know people will read this and roll their eyes at a teenager agonizing over feelings. But it feels monumental to me. It feels like the foundation of my life is at stake. Because if I let go of someone who treats me so well, what does that say about me? And if I stay with someone who no longer makes my heart race the way it once did, what does that say about us? I don't know the answer. I just know that the perfect beginning we had is now shadowed by questions I can't ignore. And that's where I am now, stuck between gratitude for what he's given me and the guilt of wanting something different. That IT started with little things. The kinds of details that shouldn't matter, that any reasonable person would brush off as quirks, imperfections, the human texture of a relationship. I kept telling myself, don't be shallow, don't be cruel, don't ruin something good just because of something small. But the small things kept piling up, and soon they didn't feel so small anymore. He's skinny. Painfully skinny. Some people like that, I know, and maybe once I even told myself I liked it too. I said I loved how he looked, told him he didn't need to change, that he was perfect as he was. And part of me meant it. I did love him. I did think he was handsome in his own way. But another part of me kept comparing him to other guys. The ones with broader shoulders, with the kinds of bodies that seemed solid and protective. I've always liked dad bods more, guys who take up space, who feel grounding just by existing next to you. With him, I feel lightness. Too much lightness. Sometimes when he hugs me, instead of comfort, I feel like I might break him. Like, my weight, my presence, is too much for his frame. It's irrational, maybe even cruel, but I can't shake it. And then guilt hits me, hard. Because how can I criticize someone for their body, especially when he's so kind to me, when he works out every day trying to get stronger? But the thought remains, circling back like a stubborn bird. What if I just don't find him attractive enough? Then there's the way he acts in public. At first, I found his weirdness endearing. The silly faces, the strange little dances, the random noises he'd make to make me laugh. I thought it was quirky, fun, something that set him apart from other boys who were too cool to let loose. But over time, it started to grate on me. When we're out and he pulls those faces, I cringe. When he cracks jokes that don't land, I want to sink into the floor. When he visits me at work and acts goofy, I feel embarrassed instead of delighted. That I hate myself for it. Because these are the exact things I used to love. It's like the lens shifted, and what once sparkled now feels dull or irritating. I don't know if it's him that changed, or me. Maybe both. Maybe neither. Maybe this is just what happens when the infatuation fades and you see the person not through rose-colored glasses, but through the harsh fluorescent lights of reality. Money has become another fracture. He doesn't like to pay for dates. Not because he doesn't care, not because he's stingy, but because he's saving for his future. He's practical, disciplined, thinking ahead in a way most boys our age don't. And part of me admires that. It shows maturity, responsibility. But another part of me resents it. Because sometimes I just want to be spoiled. I want to feel like I'm worth the splurge, worth the little luxuries. When he refuses to buy me a coffee or a movie ticket because he's saving, I feel small. I feel like I'm not a priority. And then I feel horrible for feeling that way, because saving money is smart, it's rational, it's good. But emotions aren't rational. And mine keep whispering, why doesn't he want to treat you the way you want to be treated? And then there's me. I'm not innocent in this. I can be mean, bitchy, bossy. I snap when I'm stressed, roll my eyes when I shouldn't, push him when he doesn't deserve it. And the worst part? He doesn't care. He takes it. He smiles through it. He forgives before I even apologize. And instead of making me feel lucky, it makes me feel like a terrible girlfriend. Because part of me wants him to push back, to stand up for himself, to tell me I'm wrong when I am. But he doesn't. He just keeps loving me through it. And the weight of his patience feels like a mirror I don't want to look into. Sometimes I wonder if this is what unconditional love is supposed to feel like. Warm, supportive, endless. But sometimes it feels suffocating. Like there's no tension, no edge, no challenge. Just this constant stream of acceptance that makes me question if I even deserve it. And then the darker thought creeps in. Maybe I don't even want unconditional love. Maybe I want friction, challenge, someone who doesn't just absorb my storms, but creates some of their why parents complicate everything. They caught us once, doing things we shouldn't have been doing in their house. It was messy, humiliating, and it ended with them banning me from seeing him all summer. Suddenly, our world of late-night hangouts and stolen kisses collapsed into texts and brief, hidden encounters. We promised each other it would get better, that we'd talk to our parents, convince them to ease up, rebuild what we had. But the conversations kept getting delayed. The summer stretched on in silence, and I felt my patience thinning, my feelings fading. That be why the time school started again, the spark felt weaker. He was still the same, sweet, attentive, devoted, but I wasn't. My smiles felt forced. My replies got shorter. My excuses grew longer. I could feel myself pulling away, even as he tried harder to pull me close. That I've talked to him about it. I've told him I lose feelings sometimes, that it's just a phase, that they come back eventually. And it's true, sometimes they do. Sometimes I wake up and remember why I fell in love with him. Sometimes a small gesture reignites everything. But more often now, I wake up with a dull ache of doubt. And the cycle of gaining and losing feelings is exhausting, not just for me, but for him. He deserves someone steady. Someone who doesn't waver with every mood swing, every insecurity, every comparison. He deserves someone who sees him, skinny frame and silly faces and all, and loves him without hesitation. And I'm terrified that person isn't me. But here's the catch. I'm also terrified to let him go. Because what if I never find someone else who loves me like this? What if this is my one shot at being adored, cherished, put on a pedestal? What if leaving him means trading certainty for emptiness, kindness for chaos, loyalty for loneliness? These thoughts loop endlessly in my head. Gratitude tangled with resentment. Love twisted with boredom. Guilt knotted with selfishness. I don't know how to untangle them. I don't know if I even want to. Because as much as I fear losing him, I also fear staying with him. And so I find myself stuck in this limbo, pretending everything is fine on the surface, while inside I'm unraveling. Smiling in pictures, holding his hand in hallways, sending "I love you" texts that feel more like obligations than declarations. And then hating myself for every false word, every fake smile, every pretense. This is where the cracks in perfection begin to show. Not in his actions, not in his love, but in me. In my inability to receive what he offers without dissecting it, doubting it, dismissing it. In my selfish longing for something I can't even name, that I don't know how much longer I can pretend. The cracks aren't there. And I don't know if I'm strong enough to let the whole thing break. If the cracks in our relationship began as hairline fractures, the pressure from the outside world widened them into something impossible to ignore. It wasn't just about me anymore, or him, or the tiny private world we had built between texts and secret meetups. It became about our parents, our reputations, the invisible expectations that hovered over us like storm clouds. The first blow came when my parents caught us. I don't need to go into the details. They walked in at the wrong time, at the wrong place, and what they saw convinced them that we couldn't be trusted. Their response was swift and absolute. I wasn't allowed to see him. Not at our house. Not outside. Not anywhere. Just like that, our summer plans dissolved into thin AITA first. I thought the distance might help. Maybe a little space would calm down my doubts, give me room to breathe, make me miss him enough to override everything else. But instead, the silence amplified the voices in my head. Days without him stretched into weeks, and instead of longing, I felt relief. Relief that I didn't have to pretend. Relief that I didn't have to force enthusiasm when I didn't feel it. Relief that I could sink into my own world without constantly managing his emotions. He texted, of course. Sweet, patient messages. Good morning, beautiful. I'm proud of you. I love you. And I responded, because ignoring him felt cruel. But each reply felt heavier, more performative. I'd stare at the words on my screen, trying to summon the old flutter in my chest, and instead feel nothing, just emptiness, or worse, irritation. Like his love was a weight I was dragging behind me instead of wings lifting me up. We promised we would talk to our parents, try to rebuild trust, negotiate for supervised visits or group outings. But those conversations never happened. Every time I thought about it, fear clamped down on me. Fear of confrontation, fear of disappointing my family, fear of admitting to myself that maybe I didn't want to fight for this as much as I claimed. And then school started again, and the gulf between us became glaringly obvious. In public, he was the same as always, goofy, affectionate, eager to prove our bond hadn't been broken. He'd make silly faces in the hallway, try to sneak kisses between classes, wave exaggeratedly when he saw me across the cafeteria. Everyone else thought it was cute. I wanted to crawl out of my skin. I hated myself for that reaction. Because who wouldn't want a boyfriend who's proud to show them off? Who wouldn't want to be adored so publicly, so shamelessly? But instead of pride, I felt embarrassment. Instead of joy, I felt irritation. Every gesture that once made me giggle now made me grit my teeth. And yet, when we were alone, I would sometimes melt again. When he held me and whispered about our future, about moving to the city together, about building a life side by side, part of me wanted to believe it. Part of me wanted to be swept away by his certainty, to let his conviction drown out my doubts. But another part recoiled. I'm not ready for forever. I'm not ready to tie my life so tightly to someone else's when I don't even know who I want to be yet. His vision of the future felt like a cage, even though it was built from love. The worst part is the cycle, because my feelings don't disappear completely. They fade, then flare, then fade again. One day I wake up irritated by everything he does. The next, I'm overwhelmed with gratitude for his patience. One day I fantasize about breaking up, about finally breathing on my own. The next, I can't imagine life without him. It's exhausting, and it makes me feel unstable, unreliable, unworthy of his love that he notices, of course. He asks if I'm okay. He tells me I seem distant. He wonders if he's done something wrong. And I can't bring myself to tell him the truth, that the problem isn't him, it's me. That his unwavering devotion feels like too much and not enough at the same time. Too much because it smothers me. Not enough because it doesn't ignite me. My parents don't help. They see the strain and use it as ammunition. You're too young to be tied down. He's not right for you. You should focus on yourself. And while part of me bristles at their interference, another part nods along. Maybe they're right. Maybe this relationship is holding me back. Maybe clinging to someone who loves me so deeply is just another form of fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of starting over. Fear of facing myself without the buffer of his affection. But then I think about the alternative. Letting him go. Watching him move on. Maybe with someone who appreciates him more than I do. Seeing him smile at another girl, laugh with her, love her the way he loves me. The thought burns, even as I acknowledge I might be the one pushing him. A way that I feel like I'm standing at the edge of a cliff, staring down at two paths that both look terrifying. One is staying with him, suffocating slowly under the weight of his love and my guilt. The other is leaving him, free-falling into loneliness and regret. And no matter which way I look, I can't see a safe landing. Maybe the truth is that I'm not ready for love, not this kind of love, not now. Maybe I need to be selfish, to explore, to figure myself out before I tether myself to someone else's heart. But saying that out loud feels monstrous. Because who walks away from someone who treats them like they're the most precious thing in the world? And yet, every day, the pressure builds. From him, from my parents, from myself. And I don't know how much longer I can keep holding it all inside without shattering. The breaking point didn't arrive all at once. It came in fragments, like little earthquakes loosening the ground beneath us, until one day I realized I was standing on a fault line ready to split, that my parents didn't trust him anymore after the summer incident, and every chance they had, they reminded me of that fact. At first it was subtle, don't stay out too late, remember what happened last time. But then it turned sharper. You're wasting your future on him. You're too young to be serious. He's not going anywhere in life. I defended him at first, angrily, passionately. I told them they didn't know him like I did, that he was saving money for his future, that he wanted to build a life with me, that he treated me better than anyone else ever had. But even as I said the words, some part of me wondered if they were right. Not because he wasn't good enough, but because maybe he was too good. Too good to the point that I felt suffocated, cornered, expected to live up to his love like it was a standard I couldn't maintain. That he noticed the tension. He could see the distance in my eyes when I answered his calls, hear the hesitation in my voice when I said, "I love you." He started asking more questions. Was something wrong? Was he doing enough? Was I still happy? And the more he asked, the guiltier I felt, because the truth was that nothing was wrong with him. Everything was wrong with me. One night, we finally fought. Not a playful disagreement, not a short-lived spat, but a real fight. He wanted to see me, and my parents said no. He begged me to sneak out, told me we could figure it out together, that we couldn't keep letting other people control our lives. His desperation made my chest tighten, not with longing, but with dread. I told him I couldn't, that I didn't want to keep pushing against my parents, that maybe we needed to slow down. He didn't understand. He looked at me like I had just ripped the floor out from under him. He asked if I was giving up on us. I told him no, but the words felt hollow. He said I was letting them win. I said I was tired of fighting. And in that moment, I realized how much resentment had built up inside me. Resentment toward my parents for interfering, resentment toward him for pushing, resentment toward myself for being too weak to choose either side fully. The fight ended with silence. He stopped calling for a few days. I thought maybe space would help, but instead it felt like a preview of what breaking up would actually be like. I should have felt devastated, but instead I felt lighter. Guilty, yes, but lighter. Like I could breathe again. Then he came back, full of apologies, saying he didn't want to lose me, that he'd do whatever it took to make things right. And that's when the worst thought hit me. I wasn't relieved because he apologized. I was disappointed, because his apology meant I was still tied to him, still responsible for his heart, still trapped in the cycle of love and guilt and obligation. That was when love started to feel less like a gift and more like a cage. Not because of who he was, kind, patient, devoted, but because of who I was becoming with him. Someone smaller, someone quieter, someone pretending that I wanted freedom. I wanted to go to parties, to flirt, to laugh without guilt, to explore who I was outside of being his girlfriend. I wanted to find out if there was someone else out there who made me feel that rush of attraction again, that dizzy excitement I used to feel with him but couldn't anymore. And yet the idea of actually breaking up with him made me sick, because he didn't deserve it. He didn't deserve the heartbreak, the confusion, the betrayal. But if I stayed, wasn't I betraying him anyway? By giving him half a heart instead of a whole one? By lying every time I said, "I love you," without feeling it in my bones? By letting him dream of a future that I secretly dreaded? The question spiraled. Every scenario felt wrong. Leave him, and I'm the villain. Stay with him, and I'm a liar. Either way, I'm the asshole. And so I find myself standing here, staring at a boy who loves me more than I deserve, and wondering if the kindest thing I can do is hurt him now instead of later. I kept waiting for a sign that would make the choice for me. I wanted a dramatic moment that would absolve me of responsibility, some undeniable proof that staying was right or leaving was necessary. Instead, there was only the slow accumulation of ordinary days that all pointed to the same truth. The kindest version of love is the honest one, and mine had become a performance. I thought about the future he described with such certainty and realized I had been treating it like a hallway I was obligated to walk down, not a room I wanted to enter. The guilt for feeling that way had been heavy enough to bend my spine. It shaped my posture, my voice, my decisions. It made me smaller. If love demands that you shrink to remain inside it, then maybe the container is wrong, not the person. That thought didn't arrive like lightning. It showed up the way morning does, so slowly you think nothing has changed until everything has. One day I looked at our messages and recognized how often I was pretending to be the girl I used to be. I scrolled through photos that captured versions of me smiling with a tightness around the eyes I couldn't unsee anymore. I remembered how easy it had been at the beginning, not because he was perfect, but because I was honest. Somewhere along the way, I had traded honesty for gratitude and called it maturity. It wasn't that I tried to rehearse 1,000 justifications that would make leaving sound noble. None of them were true. He had been good to me. He had been patient and gentle and loyal. He didn't deserve a villain. He deserved the dignity of clarity. I deserved that, 2.so I set terms for the ending the way people set rules for beginnings. I promised myself I would not leave by erosion. I would not turn cold and wait for him to read the temperature. I would not invite a fight to make the exit easier. I would not punish him for loving me the way he knew how. I would tell the truth, and then I would carry the consequences without asking the internet to polish them for me. That was the only version that felt like respect. The night before I acted on it, I wrote down the reasons privately so I would not edit them later to flatter myself. I wrote that attraction matters and mine had shifted. I wrote that I wanted to explore who I was without a relationship setting the borders. I wrote that his goodness did not obligate me to stay, and my restlessness did not obligate him to wait. I wrote that love can be real and still be wrong for right now. Seeing those sentences together didn't make the decision painless, but it made it clean. The conversation itself was simple. Not easy, never easy, but simple. No speeches, no accusations, no inventory of each other's failures. I named what I felt and what I no longer felt. I apologized for the months I had spent trying to hold two truths in one hand and dropping both. I did not ask for friendship as a consolation prize. That would have been a way to keep a piece of him without paying the full price of leaving. Clean lines, I told myself. If I wanted freedom, I had to accept the empty space that comes with it. Afterward, the world did not collapse. That almost disappointed me. Heartbreak deserves thunder, but life offered only errands and homework and the same bus schedule. I went home and sat in the quiet that used to scare me and tried to see if the silence was still a threat. It wasn't. It felt like air. The days that followed came in waves. Some were sharp with grief. Others were light with relief. I learned that both can be true at once, and the body is big enough to hold contradictions if you let it. I missed the way he knew my tells. I missed the rituals, playlists, check-ins, the small scaffolding of being loved. I didn't miss the performance. I didn't miss the shrinking. That distinction mattered. People will ask about regret. I don't have the cinematic kind. I have the ordinary kind that shows up in grocery aisles and songs and places that remember us. I also have gratitude that doesn't try to rewrite the ending as a failure. He taught me how to be cared for. I taught myself how to be honest. Those lessons do not cancel each other. That I kept my promise to avoid rewriting him as a villain to make myself feel better. When friends asked what happened, I told them the truth without the extra adjectives that would make me sound brave. I said, we were good and I changed. I said he loved me well and I still left. I said both can be true and I would understand if they didn't know what to do with that. Most people prefer cleaner stories. I can't give them one that weeks later I saw him across the street with friends, laughing in a way I hadn't heard from him in months. The sound hit me with an ache that was part joy and part loss. I realized then that I had not broken him. I had simply freed both of us from an arrangement that required one person to pretend. He deserves a love that doesn't need a script to sound convincing. I do, too. There is a version of me that would still be there, collecting tiny resentments. Like lint, waiting for some external disaster to grant me permission to leave without guilt. I'm grateful I didn't wait for that version. I am not proud or triumphant. I am just a person who chose early pain over late cruelty. AITA? That's the question this format demands. I think the answer depends on where you stand and what you think love owes. If you believe love is a debt you pay back until the ledger balances, then yes, I am. If you believe love is a practice of telling the truth even when it costs you, then maybe I'm not. I can live with either judgment. What I couldn't live with anymore was the quiet lie of staying because someone was good. If there is a moral here, it is small and hard and useful. Kindness without honesty curdles into obligation, and obligation cannot sustain a future. Leaving was not a verdict on his worth. It was a decision about my own integrity. Sometimes the fairest thing you can do for someone who treats you well is refuse to accept a role you can no longer play. That I don't know what the next chapter looks like. I know I will probably make mistakes. I also know that I will try to build whatever comes next without shrinking. That is the promise I made to myself in the quiet. That is the only promise I can keep. Thank you for watching this story on True Tales Hub. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a comment with your thoughts. Was I the asshole here or not? Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our next story. That we post new tales twice a day, and each one comes with unexpected twists you won't see coming.